as we move on, let's talk about, benefits between spouses and coordinating spousal benefits, because this is an area where there could be a lot of value brought to a family to increase their benefits over time. Basic spousal benefits, keep in mind they're gender neutral, meaning if both spouses have working records, both spouses would technically be eligible for a spousal benefit on the other spouse. And how much is a spousal benefit? Well, it's up to 50% of the other person's primary insurance amount. Remember, that's that amount that's quoted at that person's full retirement age. And if you claim a spousal benefit at your full retirement age, well, you're eligible for half of that other person's primary insurance amount. So if the other spouse's benefit was $2,400, their primary insurance amount, and you're claiming your spousal at your full retirement age, 50% of that, right? Hopefully that's some easy math. Now, if you claim earlier, because you could be eligible to take a spousal as early as age 62, there would be a 30 to 35% reduction to that, right? Depending on when you were born and when your full retirement age and everything. So an example of what this looks like is if your spouse's primary insurance amount is $2,400 a month and you collect a spousal as early as age 62, your check would be starting right around $780. Okay. And a critical factor here is that the other spouse has to be receiving their benefit at the time for you to elect a spousal. And it's also important to know that even though we talked about delaying benefits and all that stuff, spousal benefits do not earn delayed retirement credit. So they don't increase past your full retirement age. It's interesting though, because if you have your spouse and you're obviously eligible for spousal benefits, if you have your own working record, it's important to know you could be eligible for both your benefit and spousal benefits. And this is actually where when you coordinate between the two, choices could be made to increase lifetime benefits when you coordinate very, very well. And coordinating spousal benefits can actually impact break even and positively. And it's very important when it comes to survivor benefit considerations. Plus, some advanced claiming strategies can increase your Social Security paychecks, even though file and suspend is no longer available. If you've done any Googling and stuff, you might have read that. There is still the opportunity to file what's called a restricted application for some folks. And it's important to talk about that. So this is where it can get complicated. Let me show you an example, right? I think an example will probably be good right here. Let's take a look at what's at stake for this family when it comes to spousal benefits. Here's a different couple, another couple, she's 62, he's 67. So they're both eligible for benefits right now. They're both healthy and they expect to live well into their 80s and 90s. The husband was born on January 1st, 1954. It's the last day for a person who's eligible for what I'm about to talk about here with the restricted benefit. And their plan is to delay, right? So they understand the value of delayed retirement credits. Their plan is to delay. And they want to be thoughtful. And if they do that, they file at 62 and 70, they're basically going to collect $1.3 million over the course of their lifetimes. But if they were aware of the fact that he is still eligible to restrict his application to a spousal benefit on her, they could actually collect $34,000 more, and still get the same benefit of delaying. So here we have 62 and 70 gets the 1.3, 62 and 70, but he gets paid while he waits, and they still get the same sizable checks at age 70. He gets $34,000 more just to take advantage of the restricted application. And let me just tell you, I still run into folks all the time who are missing out on this. Other advisors, big name firms, so focused on the pie chart of investments, they don't guide their clients to identify this. It's a completely different skill set. And who wouldn't want to get paid $30-some thousand more to accomplish the same goal of delaying that benefit? A very responsible, reasonable, hey, if they're able to do it, great. Who wouldn't want to get paid to wait, right? So would this be one of those things you'd absolutely have to know before you made this decision? Can you see the cost of something like this if you missed it? That's my point. My point, and the point you'll take away from a lot of these things is that most people don't have the checklist, the process, the outline to follow. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't even know what to Google search for. They get thrown off when they're Googling file and suspend and restricted application. They get confused. They can't identify all the critical facts in order to make a sound financial decision in their best interest. And there's an important note here too, right? Coordinating spousal benefits does apply to divorced spouses as well. So that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to take this concept of coordinating benefits like we just did, concept of having to understand these critical facts so you can make sound decisions, and apply them to divorced spouses as well. So it applies to divorced spouses. Here's what spousal benefits look like for divorced spouses. Everything we just learned about for spousal benefits applies to divorced spouse, and there's no impact on the other spouse. You don't know how many times this has been an eye-opener for folks I meet. Spousal benefits can be paid to a divorced spouse if they're currently single, not married, at least age 62, had been married at least 10 continuous years, and if they're divorced for at least 2, the other spouse doesn't even have to be collecting their benefit. So everything we learned, about spousal benefits can apply to divorced spouse. They just need the right critical facts to understand how to make a sound decision about their Social Security benefits, right? So ask me any questions about that if it applies to you or if it applies to a friend. Make sure that they know. That same thing about restricting an application. I've been helping clients put more money in their pocket when they find themselves able to do that. And they're old enough, because then they can still be working, they can still be collecting, they can still get the benefits of delaying, right? As we go into the next section here, this section is going to talk about benefits for widows or widowers. And this is different from survivor benefits, or at least I'm going to separate it from survivor benefits. This speaks more to those who lost their spouse before they began to collect Social Security benefits. There's a couple key critical facts here for them. Right from a Social Security statement, essentially there's a section that talks about this. Survivors are eligible if they're age 60 or older, which notice that doesn't say 62, it says 60. And then there's a couple other criteria that they could elect earlier if there's certain other things going on in their world. And it also applies for divorced spouses as well, right? So here's a couple of the critical facts. So now we know they could be eligible to claim as early as age 60. They would receive a reduction on those benefits, but this next piece is critical. The survivor benefit would be based on the deceased benefits, including any delayed credits. So this is where, just in the grander scheme of things, if there's an intent to delay and then you get hit by a bus, the spouse you leave behind essentially still benefits from that attempt to delay. Plus, widows and widowers who qualify for benefits on their own work record may have the opportunity to delay their own benefits all the way up to age 70, take advantage of all the delayed credits they can earn, while at the same time receiving a widow or widower benefit from Social Security while they wait, right? So widow or widowers can elect as early as age 60. There's a reduction to their widow or widower benefit, and the earnings test would still apply. We're going to talk about the earnings test in a little bit, where if they're collecting and still working before full retirement age, there's considerations there. But they could elect the widow or widower benefit as early as age 60. That does not cause them to trigger their own benefit. They could let their own benefit delay all the way up to age 70. And sometimes mathematically, that makes a lot of sense to be collecting money along the way, and then eventually turn on their larger benefit. So any questions about that, let me know, of course, and we'll talk about the earnings test in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I do want to then transition the survivors conversations from widows or widowers who, remember, we labeled that as we're going to take the benefit, or the other person hadn't started taking their benefit yet. And here we're going to get into survivors benefits and clarify some things. I'll even show an example that highlights the importance of taking the surviving spouse's benefit into consideration in the grander scheme of things. So to make things simple, when one spouse passes away, one check goes away. And the survivor generally gets to keep the higher of the two benefits. So if there was two checks coming into the household, One check was for $2,600. One check was for $1,200 from Social Security. When one spouse goes away, even if it was the person who's was the $2,600 check, the larger of the two checks sticks around, but the smaller of the checks goes away. So $4,000 a month in this example would go down to $2,600 a month. And there's some important considerations about this. On average, 80% of women survive their spouse for 14 years. 80% of women survive their husbands for 14 years. That's a long time to have to live on a dramatically reduced benefit. 98% of widow benefit recipients, or survivor benefits, I should say here, are women, right? And this one's critical. The survivor's tax situation changes, right? That's something that's often not even considered with a lot of the other advisors and the big name firms out there. Not even talking about this, but the tax situation changes. So a common situation, it's important to know these things. A common situation I see is something that looks like this. So let's just say that we have a husband and wife, age 67, 62, same couples earlier in this example. They thought they were going to live well into their 80s and 90s. They're healthy. And let's just say that the husband ran some numbers on his own and he chose to elect Social Security at age 67 instead of delaying to age 70. So he elected at 67, right? He was concerned about Social Security solvency. He wanted to get the benefit he had paid into for years, and he just wanted to start taking it. Okay, so he elects at age 67 and retirement chugs on. But then he gets sick and he passes away at age 79. He thought he had a few more years. And, he felt he could reflect back and say, well, at least I got to collect benefits for 3 more years than if I had, if I have waited to 70. But there's more to that equation, as you can probably imagine by now. Electing at his age 67 didn't allow him to increase his benefit with delayed retirement credits. And that's the benefit. It's his benefit that would continue to get paid for the survivor, his wife. So let's assume, using the stats about surviving spouses, that the wife would live another 14 years beyond the husband in this case. Now we can calculate that if the husband had delayed until age 70, even if he got hit by that bus and passed away at 79 in this example, the fact that the larger check would be coming in for his spouse, and the larger check would be the ones receiving more increases because of the cost of living adjustments. And that larger amount would be what his wife would collect for 14 years. There would be 1.3 that would have come into the house. That's over, what is that, about $140,000 difference. Just to have had a thoughtful conversation about delaying a few years from a survivor perspective. So remember that, one check goes away when a spouse passes. So doing what we can to make the check that sticks around as large as possible is a major, major consideration. Here's another visual for this. Let's say the husband elected at age 67. This is what the wife's survivor benefit might look like, when he passes. When she's 70, 77, remember he was 79 when he passes. But let's just say that, when she's in here, that's what it would look like. If the husband had elected at age 70, her survivor benefit checks would be larger. And that's the check that keeps coming into the house, right? So you can see the checks on the right are obviously larger than the checks on the left. And the reason why is because on the right, again, he had elected at 70 instead of 67. That's a $138,000 difference over time. So would this be one of those things you'd absolutely have to know before you made this decision? I mean, can you see the cost of something like this if you missed it? Keep in mind, 98% of survivor benefits are paid to women, and 80% of women survive their husbands by an average of 14 years. It's a long time to live on a dramatically reduced benefit. So what's my point? My point, and the point that you're going to take away from a lot of these items, is that most people don't have a process checklist outline to follow. They don't know what questions to ask or what to Google search to identify all the critical facts necessary in order to make a sound financial decision that's in their best interest. Now, remember, we're looking to simplify this for all of you. That's why we're breaking all these pieces down, but it can still be overwhelming. You're smart people. You like to make good decisions, and you've had processes and outlines for many things in your life. You've had work, even projects at home, checklists on what to take to your next family vacation. But when it comes to financial decisions, what I see is that run-of-the-mill advisors and big name firms, they don't advise or coach on this stuff. You hear them say that's for Social Security Administration to handle. Ask them, or talk to your tax advisor about that. Or worse yet, if you don't know to ask, they don't even bring it up. I think you can see that when we're missing a critical fact or two, it can oftentimes make a massive impact or create a massive cost. So think about that. Who's helping you identify and analyze these critical facts?